isolated. The attic is, no doubt, an eerie part of the house, a place where ghosts and nightmares dwell. Have you ever wondered what is it about this space that makes us fear it so much, and what feminism has to do with it? The first Gothic novel to use an attic for horror was Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. In this novel, a mentally ill woman, Bertha Mason, is secretly held captive in an attic room by her husband. Bertha embodies the consequences of challenging gender expectations, which resulted in her seclusion and ultimate descent into madness. The attic is the physical manifestation of her marginalization, the suppression of her desires and aspirations. By confining her to this hidden space, society attempts to erase her presence and maintain a fragile illusion of patriarchal control. Many female Victorian writers followed, using the same trope. It was used so often that it ended up introducing a new phenomenon into art and literature. To understand the reasons behind it, we must remember that in Victorian England's patriarchal society, men held positions of political, economic and social power, while women were confined to their roles as obedient wives and devoted mothers. This usually prevented them from engaging in activities outside the house. But what was going on inside? In the classic model of a 19th century house, the wealthy occupied the accessible ground of first floor, the bel etage, while the attic housed the servants, the sick, and the poor. For women who didn't fit into the traditional norms and were thus seen as a threat to society, the abandoned and rent-free attic became the only refuge. Thus, the attic became a symbol for female authors of the time. It stood for the arbitrary limitations imposed on women. The horror of the attic was the horror of feminine repression. A retreat to the attic was a breaking point of this repression, an urge for escape and a quest for social identity. But where could they escape? Charlotte Bronte was amongst the first Victorian writers to talk about the feminine experience of walking in the city. There had always been women living in the cities, yet the joy of flaneurism, the art of strolling, was exclusively associated with male figures. At last, the Victorian flaneuse was intent on challenging that prejudice. She broke out of the confinement of the house, beaconing an increasing feminine desire for autonomy and exploration of public spaces. The flaneuse embodied curiosity, freedom, and the willingness to occupy the city's streets, to observe and take part in urban and political life. This figure disrupted the belief that women should never step out of the private sphere. No wonder, then, that the concept of the flaneuse was first met with contradictions and limitations, which distinguished it from its male counterpart. Victorian society held rigid expectations for women's behavior, and the flaneuse presence in public spaces was met with judgment and suspicion. Women who ventured out alone were subjected to scrutiny, and their motivations frequently questioned. The freedom, taken more than granted, to roam the streets came with the risk of being labeled a fallen woman. The fair sex was not thought to possess the moral strength to resist the temptations of urban landscapes. This was explored by Victorian poet Christina Rossetti in her poem Goblin Market. It tells the story of two sisters, Laura and Lizzie, who encounter goblin men selling forbidden fruits. While Laura succumbs to the goblin's temptation, Lizzie refuses to give in to their allure and sets out on a quest to save her sister. The characters of Laura and Lizzie embody the joys and dangers of urban exploration. The sisters actively engage with the forbidden realm of the Goblin Market, and, in doing so, challenge traditional gender roles. The poem metaphorically touches on themes of temptation, desire, liberation, and sisterhood. Christina Rossetti lived in London and spent 20 years working in a charity refuge for ex-prostitutes. In her poem, she celebrates the autonomy and resilience of women, offering a powerful critique of Victorian society's attempts to control women's lives. Shaped by the narratives of Victorian urbanism, the madwoman in the attic and the flaneuse can be seen as two sides of women's call for freedom in response to the limitations placed on them by Victorian society. One translates a desire for autonomy and exploration, while the other represents the most frightening consequences of defined societal norms. The madwoman in the attic is a sort of broken flaneuse, her cry for independence and representation strangled and confined to the most private of private, the most hidden of hidden rooms. Her shambolic and exiguous mind, represented by the attic, is the only place where she can enjoy the liberty she was denied. In its way of thematizing the conflict between upholding rigid social norms and breaking them to express one's drives, the couple madwoman in the attic flaneuse can itself be regarded as the feminine counterpart to a more famous and chiefly masculine duo of Victorian literature, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Almost 200 years have passed since. Where are we now? Many recent indie horror movies have turned women walking alone in a city into a horror trope. But this shall be the topic of another video essay.